Hello, and welcome to the video tutorial on fair recruitment practices for employment agencies. This video will help employment agencies understand how to comply with the fair recruitment requirements set out in the Tripartite Guidelines on fair employment practices when recruiting on behalf of your clients. It will also cover the licensing conditions required of employment agencies. As an employment agency, your key role is not just to help your clients fill up vacancies, but to look for the right candidates by hiring on merit. Based on a 2018 survey conducted by the Ministry of Manpower with more than 2,000 employers, 3 in 10 vacancies are filled by employment agencies. You have a big part to play in hiring fairly. The Ministry of Manpower has introduced new license conditions for agencies to consider Singaporeans fairly when recruiting on behalf of their clients, and to abide by the Tripartite Guidelines on Fair Employment Practices, or TGFEP. What are these new requirements, and how would it affect employment agencies and their agents? First, employment agencies must brief clients on fair recruitment requirements in the TGFEP. Second, discriminatory job advertisements cannot be posted on behalf of clients. Third, there must be reasonable efforts made to attract Singaporeans for vacancies, unless there is a documented agreement that a client has instructed otherwise. Fourth, all candidates must be considered based on merit. Fifth, employment agencies must submit returns to the Ministry of Manpower on referrals to enable the Ministry to monitor the efforts made in attracting and considering candidates. Let us study each of the requirements in more detail. Firstly, as an agent, you are required to brief existing and new clients on the prevailing guidelines on fair recruitment practices in the TGFEP, as well as any subsequent changes made to the guidelines. The prevailing guidelines can be found in the following chapters in the TGFEP. 1. Consistent and fair selection criteria. 2. Hiring and developing a Singaporean core. And 3. Recruitment. After the briefing, you must retain documentary proof, including, but not limited to, electronic correspondences to the employer to show that the briefing has indeed taken place. Documentary proof will have to be produced upon request by the Ministry of Manpower. Your responsibility as a hiring partner is to ensure recruitment is done fairly and objectively. It starts from the time you receive a job order from your client. When working with clients, we encourage you to spend time to go through their job specifications with them and understand their requirements well. You have to play an active role to remind clients to be fair and objective by ensuring job advertisements have clear job duties and responsibilities listed, and that job criteria used are objective and relevant. Take the lead to guide your client closely to follow the TGFEP, and this will help your agency fulfill your responsibility to hire and develop a Singaporean core. Most of you would already be familiar with the TGFEP, but let's review the objectives of the guidelines again. The guidelines set fair and merit-based employment practices for adoption by employers. Using these guidelines, employers are expected to recruit and select employees based on merit. Indeed, these guidelines also outline key principles of fairness to be adopted by employers across the HR processes. All Singapore-based organizations are expected to abide by it, and non-adherence can result in penalties. It is imperative to note that any form of discrimination on factors not relevant to the job, such as mental health conditions, will be in breach of the TGFEP, from pre-employment to in-employment and even exit management. The guidelines will be able to guide companies on how to be fair using its key principles. What are these principles? Here are the key principles in the TGFEP. The first principle requires employers to recruit and select employees on the basis of merit, such as looking at someone's skills, experience, or ability to perform the job, and not discriminate on personal attributes, such as age, race, gender, religion, marital status and family responsibilities, or disability, which are not relevant to the person's ability to perform in a role and should not be used as selection criteria. Employees should be treated fairly and with respect. Companies should put in place progressive human resource management systems. Employees should have equal opportunities to be considered for relevant training and development to help them achieve their full potential. Employees should be rewarded fairly based on their ability, performance, contribution, and experience. And lastly, employers must abide by labour laws and adopt the TGFEP. The TGFEP also has a chapter on hiring and developing a Singaporean core, which strongly encourages all employers to make reasonable efforts to attract and consider Singaporeans on merit, and to train and develop their potential and careers. This effort is to ensure Singaporeans remain at the core of our workforce. All employers in Singapore, including employment agencies, are to fairly consider Singaporeans and comply with the fair consideration framework in their hiring. When advertising for a job position, you have to ensure it is available to Singaporeans. You can also work closely with educational institutions, career centres, and recruitment agencies to get access to a large pool of Singaporean candidates and have a better opportunity to place the right person for the right job. As part of career development for Singaporeans, employers should also offer training for Singaporeans to develop their skills and expertise to progress for higher-level jobs. Under the second requirement, you are not allowed to post discriminatory job advertisements on behalf of your clients. Remind your clients that all job advertisements should only include selection criteria related to the job, centered around skills, knowledge, experience, and qualifications of the applicants. Bear in mind that words or phrases that discriminate against applicants based on age, gender, race, religion, marital status and family responsibilities, or disability should not be used. You should also highlight to your client that all job advertisements will be subject to scrutiny regardless of where it is posted. For example, online job portals, newspapers, at the shop front, or during an event at HDB blocks. How do you look out for these discriminatory words and phrases? Once you understand your client's requirements and you are ready to place an advertisement, you should spot all possible discriminatory elements in their job specifications. Here are some guidelines on what you must not say in your advertisements. Age. Words or phrases that suggest a preference for a particular age group should not be used. Where the nature of the job is physically demanding, such as handling of heavy cargo, state this requirement in the job description rather than specifying the requirements for a specific age group. If the job is bound by regulatory requirements for age criteria in a particular industry, then the reasons have to be stated clearly in the advertisement. On the other hand, if the job is supporting a national agenda for older workers, you may include in the advertisement that the job is suitable for them in support of national efforts to enhance their employment opportunities. Gender. Avoid using gender as a selection criterion unless there are practical requirements. This may be the case of a female masseur required to attend to female customers. In such cases, do state the reason clearly in the job advertisement. In cases where job titles appear to be gender-centric, for example, draughtsman or chambermaid, you may state that both genders may apply for the job, so that job applicants are clear on the requirement. Language. If proficiency in a particular language is a job requirement, you should state the reason. An example would be the need for a translator of a Malay sports magazine, where the requirement to be proficient in Malay should be stated. Make sure that your job advertisement is in the same language as your advertising medium. If your job advertisement has any other language text in it, you should provide job-related reasons for it. Marital status and family responsibilities. An applicant's marital status and family responsibilities are generally irrelevant criteria. Race. Race should not be used as a criterion for selection of job candidates, as multiracialism is a fundamental principle in Singapore. Preference for a particular race is unacceptable. Religion. Avoid using religion as a selection criterion, unless the job requires the applicant to perform religious functions or fulfill religious certification standards. In such cases, you must present the requirements clearly, objectively, and sensitively. Nationality. Avoid using nationality as a requirement in job advertisements. In particular, words or phrases that indicate a preference for non-Singaporeans should not be used. Do avoid this list of words and phrases in job advertisements. Let's go through one or two examples to explain why these can be deemed as discriminatory. Stating a nationality or country in a job title immediately conveys the idea that the advertiser is looking for someone from a particular country. For example, an Italian chef will be taken to mean a chef who hails from Italy. However, if the intention is to refer to a chef who is trained or whose specialty is in Italian cuisine, then the requirement should be stated as such. Stating that you are looking for individuals that are exempted from or not liable for national service may imply that you are looking either for female candidates or foreign candidates to fill your vacancies. Such ambiguities can create the impression that you are being discriminatory. Now that you are familiar with what a fair job advertisement should look like, you are ready to share the knowledge with your client. Here is your checklist to summarize what you have learned on the use of fair and objective criteria in job advertisements. Ensure that job duties and responsibilities are well described. The requirements of the successful candidate must be based on the job. Objective criteria such as qualifications, skills, knowledge, and experience are used in the advertisement. Remember, once any job advertisement gets posted with discriminatory words or phrases, it can certainly cause grave consequences for you and your client. Let's see what happens when a job order is received from a Japanese firm who is looking for a secretary, specifically a Japanese one. Based on the client's request, the employment agency included the requirement in the job advertisement stating that a Japanese is preferred for the job. Is this job requirement fair and objective? This advertisement is certainly discriminatory in nature. Let's look at why this is so. What should the agency have done? The agency should have advised the client that it is discriminatory to state the preference for a particular nationality, in this case, Japanese. Instead, the client should focus on the proficiency in the Japanese language, which is really the key requirement in order to perform tasks requiring a language proficiency. Local job applicants who are proficient with the Japanese language can be considered for the position if they also meet all other criteria. This is what the job advertisement should look like, where it clearly states that the applicant needs to be proficient in Japanese to carry out the task of translation. Let's go through what a fair and objective job advertisement looks like. This company is looking to fill in the position of a customer service executive, and the job duties and responsibilities are clearly listed. The job requirements are clearly indicated, and applicants know what skills they must possess in order to carry out the role adequately. Under the third license requirement, all employment agencies must make reasonable efforts to attract Singaporeans for vacancies, unless there is a documented mutual agreement that the client has instructed the employment agency otherwise. This agreement must be retained for 1 year and shown to the Ministry of Manpower upon request. All employers and employment agencies are encouraged to advertise on the online job portal mycareersfuture.sg, which is set up for local employees, and fairly consider all candidates who meet their requirements. You are strongly encouraged to advertise job vacancies on this portal, even if the jobs meet the eligibility criteria for advertising exemption under the Fair Consideration Framework, as that would allow access to a larger pool of local candidates. You may also consider other ways to reach out to more Singaporeans by participating in career fairs, working with educational institutes, or tapping on Workforce Singapore, otherwise known as WSG, and E2I's career matching services, who have career centres for you to look for local candidates and develop a pipeline of job seekers. By doing these, your clients can get access to a large pool of Singaporean candidates and have a better opportunity to place the right person for the right job. Employment agencies must not in any way abet discriminatory hiring by clients, and must also turn down requests or instructions from clients to carry out discriminatory hiring. You must also make reasonable efforts to attract Singaporeans for a job order. If your client instructs otherwise, the employment agency will need to obtain the employer's acknowledgement with a form available on the Ministry of Manpower's website. Consequently, the employer must acknowledge that it is responsible for making other reasonable efforts to attract Singaporeans for a given job order, to adhere to the TGFEP. Fourthly, employment agencies must shortlist, interview and refer applicants to employers based on merit, and not discriminate against applicants on grounds that are irrelevant to the job, such as age, race, gender, religion, marital status and family responsibilities, and disabilities. Employment agencies should also ensure that Singaporean applicants are considered fairly for all positions. Now that your job advertisement is posted, candidates will start applying for the job and may be required to complete job application forms. If you have an application form, which all candidates must use, the TGFEP also requires you to refrain from asking for information on age, gender, race, religion, marital status and family responsibilities, including whether an applicant is pregnant or has children, and disability. This includes any information that allows you to derive the person's age, such as date of birth or NRIC number. Do remember that any of this information requested in an application form can be viewed as discriminatory. If there is a need for you to collect any of the candidate's personal information, you can ask for it at the point of the job offer. Similarly, as part of your brief to your clients, do impress upon them that they are to adhere to the same requirements in their own job application forms, if any. What type of information should you be collecting in the form to assess the suitability of an applicant? Adhering to the TGFEP, employers must use objective shortlisting criteria, such as the candidate's ability, competencies, and skills to perform the job. The selection criteria should be made known to employees involved in the hiring process and all job applicants. To ensure the criteria remain relevant, it should be reviewed regularly. The rule of thumb is, collect only information relevant to the assessment of the applicant's suitability for the job. Having used a set of objective criteria to shortlist candidates, you are now ready to interview them. In line with the TGFEP, you are expected to conduct interviews in a fair and objective manner. As an interviewer, do remind yourself to be aware of your own stereotypes and biases, and not to ask questions that automatically excludes certain groups of candidates. At all times, treat your candidates with respect and avoid questions, phrases, or comments that can be perceived as discriminatory. Besides using fair and objective criteria to select candidates based on the TGFEP, you should be familiar with the labour laws and advise your clients if you find that their contractual clauses are not in compliance with the law. And finally, the fifth requirement requires all employment agencies to collect the following information for every applicant referred to employers for permanent or contract job positions of at least 6 months with a fixed monthly salary of $3,300 and above. 1. The NRIC or Foreign Identification Number of the job applicant. 2. The Unique Entity Number or UEN of the employer to whom the applicant is referred. 3. The date that the employment agency referred the applicant to the employer. And 4. The occupation and corresponding 5-digit Singapore Standard Occupational Classification or SSOC 2015 code of the job position that the applicant is referred to. This will assist the Ministry of Manpower in determining if reasonable efforts have been made to support the fair recruitment of Singaporeans. Let's summarize the 5 licensing requirements. First, employment agencies must inform clients of their fair recruitment obligations in the TGFEP. Second, employment agencies cannot post any job advertisements that are discriminatory. Third, employment agencies must make a reasonable effort to attract Singaporeans unless the client specifies otherwise. Fourth, employment agencies must consider all candidates based on merit. And lastly, employment agencies have to submit returns to the Ministry of Manpower on referrals and to take note of the changes that have been made to the requirements. Employment agencies that fail to comply with the license conditions may be issued with demerit points, have their license suspended or revoked, or face prosecution. If you need more information on the licensing conditions of employment agencies or TGFEP, you may visit the websites of the Ministry of Manpower and the Tripartite Alliance for Fair and Progressive Employment Practices.